Good morning, PRSA members and about a dozen non-members who have signed up for Beyond Vanity Metrics with Aurora Meyer. One of the public relations skills cited most often as just an absolutely essential for PR pro is the ability to measure strategic impact and prove a return on investment. In this case, an investment in PR and associated skill sets. That's why we have Aurora Meyer with us here today, maintaining a plan for keeping track of more than just likes is something we should all do, but it sounds great in theory. We don't always have the time to put that into practice. So Aurora is here to help us understand what to measure beyond those vanity metrics, if you will, to give us a head start on proving the ROI of our efforts. About Aurora, first, I'm going to put a side thank you in to Andrew McMegan, who heard about Aurora because she is a regular speaker and workshop presenter. She most recently spoke to the St. Louis chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. And if you love what you hear today, I think you will, and you have friends who missed it, I believe, Aurora, you're also speaking to an Oregon chapter later on this week. So
yes, I am on the 19th, I think, and I'm happy to talk to your group as well. So I didn't collect all this knowledge to hoard it.
So we can follow you as groupies if we'd like. Aurora is an award-winning media strategist. She is an APR, that's an accreditation in public relations. And if you're looking at her screen right now, she's got a lighthouse calendar behind her. Right above that is that cool APR certificate. And I've already asked Aurora to tell us a little bit more about that at the end of her presentation for those who are interested in what that's all about. Aurora is also a sought-after elementary school reader, and I understand very, very popular with the 4th grade crowd and under. So please join me in welcoming Aurora Meyer. Aurora.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I mentioned the mystery reader because it's important to know that as public relations professionals, we gauge all of our interactions in multiple ways. So if you are comfortable turning on your cameras, if you are comfortable acting like the 4th or 3rd or 2nd or 1st graders or my kinders who just raise their hand or blurt out a question, just like because it's on the top of their head and they just can't hold it in, cool. I love that. It is totally fine with me. I'm super happy to answer questions. And if we ask so many questions that we don't get to all the slides, don't panic. The slides are not done in your traditional TED Talk, 3 points, 30-point font. They are designed so that you can take the PDF that I've shared with your chapter home with you, look at it in a day, a week, a month, a year, and still be able to get something out of it so that the notes are all there. You don't have to go back and be like, what on earth does this meme mean? Because there's no notes with it. All the notes are on the screen. We're going to talk a lot about more than just what's on the screen, but I want you to know that I did it on purpose and that it's okay if you are as excited about this as my kindergartners are when I read Snowy Day. So we're going to jump right in.
Aurora, if I can interrupt, so I understand you like to see faces on camera.
I do. If you're comfortable,
okay.
cool. Feel free. If you're not, also totally fine. Like I can go either way.
Some and the chat room is active.
The chat room is super active. So Andrea just said she's going to send the slides to everybody who registered. And again, please ask questions along the way. Vanity in the definition pulls 0 punches. Excessive pride, admiration of one's own appearance, quality of the quality of being worthless or futile, meaning that there's no substance to it. It's a lot like navel gazing, but it's okay because everybody has to start somewhere. And so though my background, which Mike has also given you, is in depth in social analytics and social behavior, I didn't start here. So if you aren't starting at the same point that we're going to go over and you're just now starting to keep track of likes and comments and clicks, and you're just starting to do some links between your business goals and objectives and what you're doing for your content, that is absolutely okay. You should be wholeheartedly proud of yourself for starting somewhere. If you aren't at going beyond yet, keep this presentation, watch it again, keep the notes, because at some point you're going to be ready for that next step. So our agenda is pretty big. We're going to go over some current trends, what moving beyond vanity metrics look like, what the platforms are right for you, what a cross-platform campaign can look like, how you can test and optimize and really hone in on the things that your audience is telling you, ways to track and measure, takeaways, and some questions and answers. It's a big agenda, but we're going to go through all of it. Again, the chat's open, so please feel free to ask questions along the way. So every time I do this slide, I slightly cringe a tiny little bit. When I first did this slide, the post didn't have an asterisk next to it because I don't know when we're going to be officially in post-pandemic times. If somebody's got a crystal ball and wants to weigh in on what the official timeline for post-pandemic looks like, I'm all ears. However, for the meantime, these are like planned post-pandemic trends. Some really important things that you should know are that the global internet traffic has grown by 30%. People are spending more time, considerably more time, connected than they were even at the start of 2020. And many of the digital habits formed during the initial lockdown phases and subsequent pullbacks and reentry and pullback again, those habits have started to endure and have shown quite a bit of staying power, more so than we initially thought. And if you are like me and you geek out on references, I'm super happy to share exactly where I pulled all of these statistics from. So some really cool things that have happened in terms of what platforms people are adopting and keeping are, for example, TikTok. It started out as what seemed like a kind of high school version of YouTube and Instagram smushed together. But TikTok has overtaken YouTube, both in the United States and the United Kingdom. And though they were trading places kind of back and forth, TikTok is definitely overtaken it as far as engagements. So that is all to say, you don't have to register for a TikTok for your organization or brand. In fact, if it doesn't make sense for you, that's completely okay. But if it is something that you want to try dabbling in, you have lots of room to do so. And there's lots of ways to do that. But know that that's going to be something that's going to keep changing. For example, we've had a lot of other platforms that have cropped up over the last couple of months that have just tanked. Like they just tanked, and they didn't have the staying power that TikTok has. So keep an eye on how things are going. Go ahead and reserve your name on TikTok, reserve your name on any platform that comes up, but don't feel obligated to start publishing content there if it doesn't make sense for you and your brand. Here are some stats from July. I'm actually not entirely sure when Hootsuite's going to release their next one, but I know that they release this every July. And what is interesting is the average amount of time people are spending in different places is really starting to become fractured by population, location. So depending on who your audience is, something that made sense for you to be a part of 3 or 4 years ago may not make sense for you to be a part of again today. So this is just an example of where people are spending more time. They are definitely spending more time binge watching things on television, spending way more time using social media, which includes TikTok. What I think is pretty great is that reading media is increased. That includes printed material. So physical print material still definitely has a place if it makes sense for you and your audience. Also from the July 2021 Hootsuite global social media users over time are increasing. So the number of people available in the pool of people who use the internet is continuing to grow and is growing at a rate that is becoming pretty consistent. So though we will max out at some point, we're not there yet. So the use of social media for brand research, what I think is really interesting about this particular slide, and though it is from July 2020, the information is still accurate, people are expecting to find some sort of online presence or some sort of social media presence for brands. So if you don't have any social media, then this is definitely a time where you are expected to have it. As we get beyond the 44 and under, they're really expecting you to have it. So if your target demographic is 44 years and younger, make sure that you have something for them to find, even if it is just a heavily curated brand channel. Make sure that there's something there. Okay, so now we're going to start getting into a little bit of the nitty-gritty and the specific things. Everyone here has probably heard best practices. Oh, it's best practices to do this. It's best practices to do that. Well, whenever you hear someone say best practices, I want you to take a step back and say, who is saying this is best practices? So everyone points back, TikTok, Instagram, lots and lots of places. Hey, the link's in my bio, click the link in my bio. Well, Instagram specifically is throttling people who say link in my bio or use link in bio for their text in their posts. So the average reach of posts with link in bio was significantly reduced by 33.96% versus those that didn't say link in bio. So though it is best practice or that it's common practice, it doesn't mean it's necessarily the right practice and doesn't mean that it's necessarily good for you to continue to do, because it's probably going to throttle your posts. So whenever you hear someone say, oh, it's best practice, or you start to see something that is kind of ubiquitous, take a second to do a quick Google search and say, is this really a best practice, or is this something everybody's doing and is actually not good for the content that we're creating? Once you have started looking at your content, looking at your practices, looking at how you're producing the things that you're producing, and starting to keep track of your likes, your comments, your shares, your general interactions, the views, the impressions, all of those initial things. And again, if that's where you are right now, it is an excellent place to be. You should absolutely continue doing that for a little while, and then maybe add in one or two of the other things that we're going to talk about. But once you've started doing that and you're ready to move to the next thing, start thinking about what is the purpose. Every piece of content that you're producing should have a purpose. And it should be in order to build trust with your audience, in order to get them to do the thing that you want them to do. You are producing the content for a reason. You are producing the content with an end goal in mind, but start beginning to plan your content with the ultimate end goal. Probably increase your business things, increase your business objectives. So public relations professionals are sourcing more coverage than they were ever before. And one of the things that is important to start thinking about is sourcing coverage for your media relationships, producing measurable results, tying PR activities to key business initiatives. Those measurable results and key business initiatives are just as important, if not in some ways more important than your media relationships. Because if you're producing and tying your activities to your key business objectives, it's going to help you get more coverage, because you're going to be able to link things back, and you're going to be able to give your media representatives more information on just how many people are interested in this. What kind of reaction are you getting? You can give more details than just your initial research. So what are the business goals that you are trying to achieve? When you sit down with your leadership team, or if you are lucky enough to have a seat at the table, when you're having those conversations, why are you doing the thing that you're doing? Why does your nonprofit exist? Why does your business exist? Why do schools exist? Why is the place that you work exist? Is it because you serve students? Is it because you connect people with resources? Is it that you need to connect more people with more resources, or increase your donations, or get more members? Or if you're an organization that has white papers, do you need more downloads? What are the things that are going to help you move your key business goals and objectives forward? Just write those down. Get a blank piece of paper, Google Sheet, Google Doc, whatever makes you happy, and write down why you are doing the thing that you're doing. Andrea asks a great question about what do you mean by coverage? So media coverage or overall reach? I think both. I have found that in conversations with media, when I'm pitching a story or when I'm answering their questions, if I can say, well, we have in our most recent online campaign, we increased our white paper downloads by 44%, and we helped connect 200 more people with the resources in our community that they need. Those types of quotes tend to make it into stories when I can relate it back to a specific audience or a specific goal. And it also makes leadership happy because then they can see in print sometimes, or at least online, what it is that we're doing that are moving those ultimate business goals forward. Andrea, I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, pop back in and I'm happy to answer it a different way. So what are the other key metrics that you might want to focus on? So we've talked about likes, shares, and comments, those initial low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging for a reason is to give you that confidence to try that next level. Some things you might want to think about are leads, are conversions, clicks, comments specifically if they're giving you feedback. Feedback could be great for that media coverage or for your content, for user-generated content, which is huge. Non-organization mentions and tags. And that 1 to 10 rule can be broken down to, for every 10 posts or 10 pieces of content you create, one of them should be a direct ask. The other 9 should be to warm somebody up or to get people prepared and comfortable with the ask that you're going to ask them. So for example, let's pretend that you are an organization that subsists on donations. And we're getting up to the time of year where people start to think about making their end of year donations. So you could start planning your content around, that your big ask is going to be on December 1st, that you have this big splashy thing that you've put together to do your big asks for donations, and that you're going to have that link there. So the other 9 posts or the other content leading up to December 1st could be, how have you used donations in the past? Show me 4 or 5 things that are a direct result of donations. Show me what you plan to do next. Show me the things that you're focusing on. Show me how you're helping people, how you're doing the thing that you want to do. And start consciously planning those things out, because the more you plan, the better your results are going to be. And it'll help you as we go into what to optimize in the future. So some key performance indicators are audience growth, engagement percentage, earned media value. One of the things that I like to see and I like to do in a perfect world, when I have perfect time and perfect all the things, I like to have a social campaign that has landing pages and other elements that we bring it all the way through. I can say that this post, because I'm using UTM codes, this specific post had 10 people click on it, and 1 person went all the way to the end of where I wanted them to go. Because then I can say, okay, we got 1 out of the 10, and there were maybe 30, 50, 70 people that interacted with that post in some way. How do I repeat that? How do I do the same thing again? And it'll let me have a place to test. And so all of these things, audience growth, engagement percentage, all of them work together. These are just some things to start thinking about in addition to those likes, comments, and shares. Some other things to think about are recruitment and job applications. Right now, that's a huge thing for public schools. We're really working on recruitment. And so how do I know that the posts that I'm creating or the content that I'm creating is moving people through that funnel, is getting people warmed up to the idea of working here? And I can do that by having all kinds of different elements and different imagery and different words for ads, for social posts, and see what resonates the best. What is getting the most applications? One of the things that is also really critical as you're going through this process is to maintain focus on your funnel. This is a really basic funnel. Your funnel might look a little different. That's totally okay. There is no right or wrong funnel, but a basic funnel is you have a pool of people who are becoming aware of your organization and your brand. They're going to consider you. Then they're going to do the thing that you want them to do. That's that conversion. And then if you're lucky, they're going to do that thing more than once. And if they do that thing more than once and then they tell somebody, they're your advocates. And every single thing that you do should be pushing people to ultimately become advocates. And you should have different pieces of content for different parts of the funnel. You should be calling for advocacy when you're asking for, hey, how did we help you? Or that user-generated content is another way to think of advocacy. So these are some of just 6. We really only have time to go over 6 main platforms. And a lot of the analysis for TikTok just isn't available yet, as it has been adopted by different demographics. So know that that is something that will be available in the future. But for the right now, we're going to go through which platforms are right for which parts of the funnel and which parts of a campaign. Again, tons of content on these slides. I know that it's a lot. It's designed for you guys to be able to look back at it again and know what I was talking about. But the most important thing is to think about your content, your platform, and where you are in that funnel. If you take nothing else away from these slides, take that away. So LinkedIn is really good for sharing information about what makes your organization or business specific and unique. And the different ways to move people through the funnel are listed right there. Share your brand news, share your job openings, get newsletter sign-ups, create a group designed for the people who are already your advocates. LinkedIn is really tailored to brand and organization ambassadorship. If you think of it that way, then that's a great place for you. If you're doing business to business kind of public relations, LinkedIn is a place that you really should be spending more time maybe than you already are. Or if you're already spending a lot of time there, great. Think about how you can move people through your own funnel with the content you're creating. Facebook is really good for community building specifically. Facebook groups is another option. Facebook is going through a bit of an identity crisis, as it seems to do on a regular basis. So I would not necessarily suggest putting all of your attention on just Facebook, because your audience is starting to change who is spending the most amount of time on Facebook. So really look at your back-end analytics and see, are you having the most engagement on which part of the funnel? What does your audience that's engaging with those posts look like? Pinterest, as Pinterest is getting bought by, I think, PayPal. I could be totally wrong, but I know someone is purchasing it. I think it's PayPal. As that takeover occurs and it becomes more of a direct shopping platform versus a magazine curation for your brain, that whole platform is going to change in which part of the funnel it's best for. I'm going to go ahead and say that it's probably going to be a lot more conversion focused. That product promotion, that how-to content with click to buy right from the pin, that is going to probably increase significantly. Again, don't have a crystal ball, just guessing, but I think that if you are starting to focus a bit more on the conversion part of Pinterest, you are probably going to have some luck as that conversion happens. Twitter is good for awareness. Twitter is like, sort of a little bit like yelling into a crowded room and jumping up and saying, hey, we've got these cool things. There's a place for it. There's a place for those conversations. There's a place for building that awareness. Twitter is also a really, really great place to connect with your media and getting your thought leadership out through Twitter is a great idea. If you're not already doing that, it's something you might want to think about. Instagram, I love Instagram for behind the scenes. Instagram is a great way to humanize your brand. It's a really great way to make people consider you in a way that they haven't previously. So the best content that you can share are behind the scenes, are that user-generated content. How are people interacting with you? How are people using or doing the thing that you're asking them to do? As long as you can get a really pretty picture out of it and you can come up with some really great words around it, Instagram is a great place to begin sharing those things. That is also a relatively low barrier to entry. Gaining a following there is not as easy as it is in other platforms, but those who do follow you on Instagram or follow your brand on Instagram are probably really high on that loyalty and advocacy scale. Snapchat, I will be completely transparent and say, I like Snapchat for my friends. I think there are some brands that are doing some really interesting things with Snapchat, but Snapchat is hard. It's a hard place to get into unless you have a geofence and you have some really cool lenses to go with it. So it may not be the right place for you. So if somebody is coming up to you, like they do me on a regular basis, and say, hey, I think we need Snapchat. Do we need Snapchat? Like, what's the point of Snapchat? Why do you think we need to be on Snapchat? So if you have an events-based organization or you do events to go perfectly with your January 11th event for what post-pandemic events look like, Snapchat is a great place to start trying those out. Try a lens if it's within your budget. Try a geofence and some cool tags. You could have great success there. It's a good place for consideration and promotion, specifically for events in that conversion level. We went over those pretty quickly. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to jump in. Someone pointed out that it is not as expensive as they thought it would be. Awesome. I know it has a lot to do with where you're located and how large your event is. So I'm so happy that it wasn't as expensive as you thought it would be. That's great. How to set up a cross-platform campaign. So these are the 5 questions whenever I'm setting up any campaign, whether it is platform specific or cross-platform, that I go through and I write it out. I write out our answers. Who is the audience? Where are they spending time? Because if my audience is spending time on Facebook, then I don't necessarily need to be spending as much time promoting the thing that I want them to do on Instagram. Look and see where they're spending the time. And you can find the information. Again, a quick Google search will tell you a lot of where current people are spending time. It's amazing how many people participate in surveys now. There's a lot of information just available at our fingertips. Then once I've done that part of the research, I like to think about, what do I want to accomplish? What is the goal? Why are we doing this thing? Why are we having this event? Why are we having this meeting? What are we doing? What do we want to accomplish? And then in the messaging, I like to bring it back to the why. Why are we doing this thing? Why are we having this event? Why are we telling people how to have a hybrid event post-pandemic? Because that's what events are going to look like. So that's part of your messaging. Write out a few pieces of messaging. They don't have to be full sentences. They can be just some ideas that you have around your messaging. But once you've got your audience, where they're spending time, what you want to accomplish, your message, then start looking at how to make sure your content is aligned across platforms. You don't want to have these amazing, beautiful Instagram photos, and then in your newsletter have some badly cropped iPhone photos. iPhones take great photos, but if you don't crop them correctly or give them the same treatment you would for Instagram, there's going to be a bit of disconnect. So make sure that your content is aligned across your platforms, across your landing pages, so that it all looks like it's cohesive. And then I like to get out a calendar, and I still love printed, handwrite, usually in pencil so that I can erase things, a content calendar to align with the timing. If we go back to that December 1st idea where you've got this big event that you're going to launch your holiday donation campaign on December 1st, make sure that your content calendar aligns to that timing, that all the things you're doing are building up to that, and keeping the momentum going. Once you have started putting out your content, then you can start testing. And this is where things get really, I like to think they're really fun. You can test tiny things, like just a slight change in tone. You can test different images. You can test your different call to actions. You can test maybe putting more yous in the content, but start to test. But when you test, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is to keep track of what you test. So if you're lucky and you're doing an A/B test, make sure that you write exactly what A was and then what you changed for B, so that you can see which one performed the best. It sounds not like rocket science. It's something that we all do, but being purposeful in writing down and really thinking about what it is you're testing and what it is you change will give you that information when you are looking back at this in a month going, I know I did things, I can look and see what it is, and I can guess why I changed it. But if I include why I changed it or why I thought it would work differently and what the results from each were in one piece of paper or in one Google Doc, then I'm going to have a lot more information to present to leadership on why that thing worked as well as it did. This is an example. I am not affiliated with this company in any way, shape, or form. I am really unclear how, when I started thinking about optimization and testing, these are the exact same things that popped up, because I know I didn't say it out loud. But what I love about this is that it's the exact same content. The bracelets are the same, but they're just presented differently. The alphabet beads are highlighted in one post versus the summer collection in another. The call to actions are different. It's the same content, just repurposed. And so obviously this company is testing which one resonates with their audience the most. I would love, if anybody's affiliated with them, please let me know, because I would love to know which one worked best, because I know which one speaks to me, and I'm sure you can look at it and think which one speaks to you. But it's interesting how the same thing can be used differently. Yeah, Andrea says, looks like only one is 20% off. I've clicked through these ads. It was a while ago. I think only one shared the code for 20% off. So who knows? So there are a lot of importance for tracking and measurement. If you are not tracking in one place, then you really should be. And so this slide is thanks to John Julte of the Martin Group, who's an incredible person, and who I had the amazing opportunity to present with pre-pandemic. But he shared this slide with me. And what I think is interesting is that the campaign, so in this case, it was a specific campaign for Champs, and where they had the most results. So for this campaign, the most important thing was sales, their product sales. Obviously, that's listed at the bottom and it's blacked out because it's proprietary. But what I think is interesting is that their paid advertising definitely had more of an impact than anything else, than sneaker news, than social media. And then sneaker news, having a product placement, was huge. That there is no question that the sneaker news product placement was significantly more impactful on the campaign than their general social media. So aggregate all of your campaign metrics in one place. Have a start date and a finish date for the campaign, put it all together, and then add it all up. And then as you're thinking about future campaigns, begin testing things on your organic social, because your organic social is a great place to test for your paid campaigns, for your paid advertisements. And then paid social is a great place to test for a larger digital campaign, for a larger push into more time and energy and broader campaigns across platforms. But your audience is going to tell you a lot of information about themselves and about what works and what doesn't work. And you're going to learn a lot if you follow the process of using organic as a place to test for paid, paid to test for a bigger campaign. So some key metrics to follow. We're going to go over all of the different platforms we talked about previously, but if you are not currently tracking these things, please start tracking them. I think you will be surprised by the results. When you start paying attention, things start to pick up a little bit more. Jody has a question, so I'm going to get into the question before I go through the key metrics. But Jody's question is, are there good tools to aggregate information over time? Does it need to be done manually? Jody, this is an excellent question. I'm going to go over some options at the end. So your question is perfectly timed, just a skosh early. but you can do it manually. It really depends on your budget. It depends on how much time you want to invest. But I'm a fan of things like Google Sheets, because you can use it much like you would use Excel and just add up some columns at the end if that's the only thing you need to do. Then there are lots of other ones. So I promise to answer your question with some specifics, but I'm going to jump into some key metrics for the moment. And she says, thank you. So you're super welcome. So on LinkedIn, start collecting your individual post likes and your career page stats. I love a good timeline. I love to see growth over time, and individual page stats, whether it's on LinkedIn or anywhere else, that's a great thing to start keeping track of, because it is something that does make you feel good, but it also will show you that you're having results over time. Facebook, your metrics on your posts and shares, not just impressions, likes, comments, but all of that plethora of information that's available on the back end of Facebook business. Start keeping track of those. Start looking at it. If you've never opened it before, start there. Twitter, your post reach, link clicks, and engagement percentage. Those are really good places to start looking. Instagram will tell you really cool things about your stuff. It'll tell you the best times to post. It'll let you do shoppable posts, which is really cool. And then your sticker taps and your story links clicks are when you are at 10,000 and above. But if you get there, please pat yourself on the back, because that's definite accomplishment and something you should be really happy about. Pinterest. Again, as Pinterest changes over the next probably year to 2 years, I think some of these things are going to change. The saves are important. Your engaged audience, if you're doing shoppable pins, just like on Instagram, start keeping track of those. Snapchat, your story completions are huge, and your completion percentages, those will be the most engaged people that you're going to interact with. I love screenshots, because Snapchat does tell you every time someone screenshots the piece that you're sharing, and individual snap likes. Those are also feel-good metrics. It's okay to rely on feel-good metrics. Don't let anybody tell you that it's not. How do you keep track of it all? To answer Jody's question, so you can create your own Google Sheet or Excel sheet to include the KPIs that you're tracking. So your KPI, and then your platform and the things that you're tracking. You can do it just like that and add them up at the end. I have a board. My board evolves over time. Mine right now is a bit, it's more messy than this, but these are some of the things that I know I need to be working on, and I can take a breath, or if I feel like I'm drowning, I can look up at my board and I can say, all right, what on those to-do lists, what on the pieces of paper and all the things that I have all over my desk, what on the Post-it notes is going to help me maintain open lines of communication? Which of them? Which is the thing? And then I work on that first. Sprout Social is another really good way to aggregate group metrics across platforms. There's a couple of things that I really love about Sprout. Also, if anybody works for Sprout, I love them, and I tell everybody about them. You should also love me, just so you know. Sprout's really great. It's a relatively affordable platform, and it does give you historical data. It also lets you schedule things, and it also lets you view a calendar. So if you're a visual person like I am, you can see it all in one spot. I really love it. I also wish they paid me to love them. This is what I really like about Sprout. Sprout has a group report. It also lets you do a peek into your competitors. Now, you can't see anything that's not public, but it lets you look at it from one place. I love the one place. I go to one spot and I look at all the things, and I can see some pretty detailed reports, and I can get some historical data. Historical data beyond 30 days is really important, because if you're keeping track of your audience and you start to notice that your audience is talking about something specific, you can say, ooh, I need to go back and see how long has this been a topic of conversation? What information can I glean from my audience now that I'm recognizing that this thing is happening and I need to be paying attention? Other analytic platforms that are really awesome are Hootsuite and Hubspot. I've heard really great things about Aurora Pulse. I haven't used it myself, but I've heard really lovely things. Falcon and Brand24 are some other options. So if you are like Jody trying to find a tool, I would first figure out what your budget for your tool is. I would start getting some information about what is important to you. Like, what do you want to track? How far back do you want to go? Do you want to have one place to do all the things? What is important to you? And then use that as your comparison when you're shopping around. This is my most favorite question. What does removing likes mean for social marketers? Oof. So removing likes doesn't mean we're not taking likes into consideration. Likes are an important thing to be tracking, because if all of a sudden you have a super increase in likes, that means you have a super increase in engaged people interacting with you. So likes are a great place to start, but connecting with your audience is more important. And the connections are what make you different. If you can connect with your audience in a way that really pushes people to become advocates who are loyal, you're going to be more successful in your ultimate business goals. User acquisition does become harder. It is hard to get people to go all the way down that funnel and really jump into being advocates and loyal to your brand or organization, but they're worth so much more because they're going to do the thing that you want them to do more than once. So though you can see your own content performance and your likes will possibly decrease, your engagement will be more. You will have more trust with your audience because you will be building those influencers and partners because you're focusing on connection. You're focusing on really providing content that moves your goals forward and is meaningful to your audience. So some other outcomes that you might want to be thinking about and considering as you're going through this process are acquisition of new customers, increased customer retention, improved experience. Whether you are a business to business or a business to consumer facing organization, all of these things can be translated into something that's important to you. So a recommendation is to keep track of 3 KPIs at a time. It's most common. 6 is a lot to keep track of. And so depending on the number of people on your team, you may want to keep track of 1 or 2 to start. But start paying a bit more attention to those key performance indicators that you're looking at that are going to tell you if the things that you're producing and the content you're creating is resonating with your audience. That was a lot. We just went through a lot in a short amount of time. So I think everybody could just take a breath. I'm super happy to answer questions. But the thing I want to leave you with the most is don't feel like you need to be everywhere at once. Have a map, have a plan, establish some clear goals. Don't feel like you have to do it because your direct competition is doing it. Do what makes sense for you. And test. Don't be afraid to make changes as you get into a campaign and you realize something's not working. Test, note what you changed, note why you changed it, and don't be afraid to pivot. So with that, I have a question that I get a lot. And so not because I didn't want to put anybody on the spot, I want to answer this question. I work in a team, and how do I incorporate this change? Whether your team is people that report to you or you report to people, or how does it work? That's the best. First, tell them why you're making this change. Tell them why likes and comments and shares, those are still important, but why you're starting to do more mapping and you're starting to do more tracking. It's not to give them extra busy work. So really emphasize that. It's not busy work specific, but it is more related to proving that the amazing things that they're doing, the incredible content that they're creating, those wonderful connections that they're making is meaningful to your business's bottom line. So if you can bring it back to just emphasizing how important the work that they're doing is already, and that this is just another way to showcase that, you will probably be successful. Okay, another question. Anybody else I have other ones I can go through as samples, but I really want to make sure that I'm getting to any of the questions that you have. You're welcome to pop on and raise your hand. I think I can see that, but I'm also happy to answer them in the chat. So we'll keep going through the pre-submitted questions if nobody has anything specific. Okay, how do you know where they are in the funnel? You know where they are in the funnel based on what they're doing. Are they just scrolling past your content? They're in awareness. Are they maybe giving you a like? Then they're in consideration. Are they doing the thing that you want, clicking through and doing the action? Then they're in conversion. Are they giving you user-generated content? That's advocacy. Do I have an example of repurposed content for the stages in the funnel? I don't for this specific presentation, but that is definitely something I would be happy to send over. So it could be simple as going through that December 1st idea is you know you're going to do that. So what is most important to your audience? Figuring out, is it how you're using the donations in the past, or how you will use them in the future, or what you have done over the last year. So you can look at how your audience has interacted with your previous content and see if there's some trends, and then start working through that awareness and consideration by moving people through their actions to ultimately join you on December 1st for your kickoff. I hope that answered your question. If you want more specifics, I'm super happy to share those. Just email me, which was at the top of the chat.
Aurora,
oh, Janet also likes Sprout. Yay, Janet.
Aurora, I've got one related to moving through the funnel.
Absolutely.
Is there a place for doing online surveys using these platforms to help gain this knowledge?
There is a place for online surveys. I do think that you may not necessarily need to do that if you're keeping track of the content that you're creating and the audience reaction. So you can go back and look at the last 365 days of content that you've created and see if there are trends already in what people interact with the most and what they click on the most. Are there gold nuggets hanging out there that you didn't see before? But you can definitely do something to the effect of open-ended questions to try to get some of that, to tease out some of that user-generated content, which may give you the same results as a survey. I would think about different ways to ask the questions that you are wanting to survey versus just doing a straight survey. Mm-hmm. Mike, does that help, or does that make things harder for you?
No, that helps. That's
awesome.
Good.
Anybody else? Oh, awesome. Andrea. Andrea is asking, can we ask the attendees to put in the chat what oh, yes, please. What is the content that you have found to be the most sticky? So one of the things that I talk about in general when I talk to people is you have to give your content time to breathe. So if you're just churning out content every single day, you might not recognize that that piece that you posted last Thursday has actually started to pick up more interest, has started to have more engagement than it did before. So make sure you're going back and checking. But if you have content that has been particularly sticky for you, or that has had a longer breathing room than you thought it would, I'd love to know. You can just jump in or type it in the chat. Janet says, oh, Janet, you like Sprout so much too. We can be best friends. But Janet says that's where Sprout has been helpful. It does let you know what the momentum of your posts is and gives you that kind of information over time. I am actually going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen unless there's something somebody wants me to go back to. But I am super happy to answer any other questions or tell you why the APR is awesome now, if that's what you would prefer. Mike, you're in charge.
Okay, so for everyone out here, the reason I pointed out that certificate above the lighthouse there is because APR is something that's very important to our group, PRSA, to distinguish and advance the profession of public relations. So I've asked Aurora, who I learned only at the beginning appears to be a wonderful spokesperson for the program, to say a few words about us as we close out.
Yeah, absolutely. So the APR process is intense. And if you're looking at it and you're like, oh, that's intense. Yes, it is intense, but it is incredibly useful. I have found it to be very useful in terms of having a shared language. It has been useful for having a shared language with both my leadership teams as well as other public relations professionals, because when I'm talking about goals and objectives and key performance indicators and tactics, they know what I'm talking about. And it has really changed the way I frame the work that I do. So I used to be one of those people who loves tactics. I jumped right into tactics. I didn't really think about like the why behind things. And the APR process really gave me the courage to, when somebody comes up to me with a tactic, to say, hey, that's an awesome idea. Where did the idea come from? Let's talk a little bit more about it and go through, it's called the RPI process, the research, planning, implementation, and evaluation process for literally everything that I do. So from, a holiday message to a big campaign, I can put it all into this format and then people understand it. They don't think, oh, it's just, Aurora's idea. No, here's some research that shows why this was the right idea. And here's how we did it. And here's what we tweaked along the way. And here's what we changed. And here's the end result. It has really made having conversations about that return on investment a lot easier. And what I also love is that it's given me a really deep knowledge into public relations. So as someone who's been in nonprofit and education, I don't have a deep knowledge of what financial public relations practice looks like, but I was able to get a lot of information about it as I went through this process. So I highly recommend it. I'm super happy to talk to anybody who's thinking about it and at least be your biggest cheerleader.
All right. Thank you so much, Aurora. And I would encourage anyone who's interested in it, absolutely reach out to Aurora or go to prsa.org. You can find out more about it there. A reminder, we will be having a December social. And Jessica, can I ask you to do a quick repeat of our January event?
Absolutely. Our event in January is going to be on Tuesday, the 11th, again at noon, right here on Zoom. I will put the registration in the chat box again for those that don't want to scroll all the way to the top. It is called, let me pull my flyer up again. It's called Virtual and Hybrid Events, Lessons Learned and Future Trends. It's featuring Gazala Uradnik. She runs GFS events out of Seattle, and she has a great knowledge base from her experience over the last 17 months helping nonprofits with their COVID pivot in raising funds for them to stay afloat, as we all have had to this last 2 years now. So that's my plug. Let me find the link and I'll pop it in the chat box for everyone again.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica.
Yep.
I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that this is National American Indian Heritage Month. We all know diversity and inclusion has been a big piece of what we've been talking about in the industry over this last year. If you have a little more interest in that, the Museum of Public Relations is hosting a event tomorrow called The Growing Role of Native Americans in Public Relations, and the keynote's going to be the editor of Indian Country Today. So just go to the Google up the Museum of Public Relations, and you can learn more about that. And before I say goodbye to Aurora, I want to again say thank you to our program committee chair, Andrea McMakin, for securing Aurora as our speaker for this month. And Aurora, thank you so much for bringing your talent, your insight, your smile, and your enthusiasm to our November event.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope to see you soon.